Welcome back, everybody, to the Thrive After Sports podcast. If you are tuning in on the Power of Story podcast, thank you for tuning in there as well. This is your boy, Taj Dashaun. I'm joined today by a very special guest, Miss Laura Holloway. What's going on, Laura?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Feeling very grateful to be here with you.
I'm grateful that you are here with us as well. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm excited to dive into this. We were talking a little bit beforehand. You have such an amazing story. It's funny how we got connected, but before we even go into how we got connected, can you please introduce yourself to the people, tell a little bit about who Laura Holloway is, all that good stuff.
Yes. Thank you so much. We did get connected through a fellow friend, Thomas Williams, who's such a light, and I'm sure you've already had him on your show. We've been friends for about 11 years now. I'm from Chicago. I played volleyball 2 years at Penn State, 2 years at UCLA, and then I stayed out in LA for 10 years and built a business in the health and wellness industry. And then since then, I moved back to Chicago over the last few years and have expanded my business and come back near my family and have just expanded my impact here, co-founded a nonprofit and started a new podcast. So on a just adventure of growing myself and supporting and helping other people in growing and evolving to the best version of themselves, which I know you're here to do as well. That's why we've been connected by our dear friend Thomas, who's on the same path.
Yeah, shout out to Thomas Williams, man. If you're listening to this, thank you, man. Thank you for this divine connection we have here. I'm so glad you and I got connected, Laura, because I just jumped on that panel the other night, had no idea who was going to be on there.
Same.
As you mentioned, Thomas has been on the podcast. He was actually on a panel, one of the previous episodes.
Oh, cool.
And so after we did that panel, he invited me to the panel that you and I were on. I'm like, man, this woman, Laura, she's killing it right now. She's just dropping so many gems. It was, you were like, I think we were 10 minutes in and you had probably spoken all of like 30 seconds at that point. And I was like, for sure, I'm going to need to reach out to Laura. So that's what I did. As soon as that panel was over, I reached out. I'm like, I got to get you on the podcast.
And you'll be on mine as well. So stay tuned, audience, because I know you want to hear from Taj on mine.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking forward to it. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because you had such an interesting, before you even played professionally, you had such an interesting college journey. Transferring. Can you talk a little bit about what your college experience was like and then what it was like as you transitioned into the pros? And then let's just start with that. What was your college experience like?
So I, like I said, I'm from Chicago, and I don't know how it is in every sport that's on the line listening, but in volleyball, we're getting recruited younger and younger. So I graduated high school in 2005, so I'm sure it's even changed even more. But we were recruited from a really young age. So I started playing volleyball when I was in 8th grade. And, my coach looked at my hands and my feet and he was like, dang, like, you're going to be great. Cause I got, really big hands and really big feet. So they started training me really hardcore since 8th grade. And that was kind of like the sport I chose. So I went all in for 4 years and I got really heavily recruited and I needed to make a choice around like 16, 17. So I fully committed to Penn State at 16 years old on Christmas and, made that choice early, so I always tell people, I coached volleyball for a very long time after I played sports. And I was always a mentor to the girls in choosing their schools, and really being mindful about the process. I think I really was rushed into it, just thinking like I had to make a choice. And, and I did make a great choice because every choice serves you in some way, right? No matter what it is. And good or bad, like however you want to look at it, it's serving us. And I got to play in the Big Ten. My family got to see a lot of my games. I had, was coached by one of the top all-time winning volleyball coaches in history, and had some amazing teammates that went on to be Olympians and some of the best players in the world, both on the men's and women's side. And then transferred to UCLA 2 years in. And that was my dream school. So I really actually wanted to go to UCLA. Just with the recruiting process, they had already offered someone and I needed to make a choice. So I decided to stay near my family. And then as Divine Intervention would put it, they were like, Laura, we have a spot open. Would you want to come? And it just made sense for me. We had recruited the best player in the country, or younger than me, so I wasn't going to be starting. And so I was able to transition and finish 2 years at UCLA, which was my dream school. So I got to do 2 years in the Big Ten, 2 years in the Pac-10, kind of experience both, which are so different. And with another amazing coach, Andy Manikowski, one of the greatest coaches of all time in women's volleyball as well. And, you know, it was an interesting college journey. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about friendships, relationships. I learned a lot about winning, losing, my body. I was really beat up. Honestly, I tore my first ACL when I was 18 years old. And I came back really quickly to win a national championship, which served me at the time. But, you know, in my college career, it really took a toll on my body that I came back that fast. And so I did battle with a lot of injuries. So I would say my college career was a little painful when it comes to like playing at my best and actually physically like hurting. Like I had 4 reconstructive right knee surgeries, 2 right shoulder surgeries. So I battled with a lot of injury and coming back from that. And then since then I've transitioned to becoming an entrepreneur, and that's what I've done for the last 12 years.
Awesome. And you did play professional volleyball, correct?
No, I never did. You know, I got recruited to play overseas, and it was never aligned for me. It was just, you know, I was telling you earlier, you know, I'm a transition coach. Like I support people with building a life that they love. And I've always kind of followed that methodology for myself. It's like, is this something that I truly want to do in my heart? And I always was like, okay, I could go play overseas, be the only American on my team and the only one speaking English, and be away from my family for 9 months. That doesn't sound great to me, you know? So I said, you know, how can I live the lifestyle of a professional athlete without being one? And that's how we kind of concepted our business and built what I have today. Because I still wanted to live a healthy, active lifestyle. I still wanted the freedom. I still wanted to build something that I was inspired by and was an extension of who I was. And I knew I had all the, you know, transferable skills from sports, the grit, the leadership in order to build something. So I just needed kind of a vehicle to do it. So that's kind of the pivot that I had. But yeah, I never played pro. It just wasn't aligned for me, and my body honestly really couldn't take it anymore.
Okay, so you knew it was time.
Yes, it was definitely time, and it had been time. Like I'm still in a little bit of pain today. I'm like,
oh, same here. You're not alone.
Up.
That's really interesting, Laura, that you had the foresight to be like, okay, I could go over there, play professionally, but you realized that it wasn't worth it. And then not only that, but you had the foresight to be like, well, I can still carve out a lane for myself and keep that competitor. Because I think that's a lot of times, and you know, there's a lot of athletes who are in transition. You're just trying to figure it out and you feel so lost that you don't have the sort of awareness to be like, man, I could still live that lifestyle and create a lifestyle for myself. And it sounds like that's what you did. Totally. So did you like, Kia, can you talk a little bit about that creation process? Like, how did you start creating this new life for yourself?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like, I gave myself, at least in college, like a discovery process. You know, if you're going to go play pro or not, you know, at some point, you know, it's going to end. Like you're not going to play until your 40s, 50s. I mean, maybe if you're lucky, you can play in your 40s, but those are special people. So there's going to be a transition at some point. So what I started to do is I started to look at different lanes, right? Like different career choices, different things that would fit my personality and my gifts and my skill sets. And I would look at, you know, all the people at the top, right? I would look at their marriages. I would look at their lifestyle. I would look at, you know, their flexibility. I would look at their happiness as an entire package. And I kind of did that. I was like, all right, so let me just see if I own my own volleyball club. What would that look like? Okay, there's a lot that I have to sacrifice there. So I know that I want to be married with kids, right? So I have to create a life where I have the availability to do that. If I go all in and I go to the top of whatever I'm going to do, because I know I have the fortitude to do that, I want to make sure that that top provides a lifestyle that I'm aligned with. Right. So then I was like, all right, Tony Robbins, let me look at that. Let me look at the personal growth path. And I was just like, man, he has to invest so much back into what he does. And it's him and he's losing his voice and all this. I'm like, so there's an aspect of these things that I love, but it's still not necessarily exactly the path that I want to go down. So really what happened was divine intervention. After UCLA, I met a bunch of ex-athletes and we kind of concepted this thing where we're like, okay, we're traveling a lot. We're working out, we're eating healthy. Let's create these healthy, active lifestyle centers where we bring people into this lifestyle and we create this business together. So we started with one small center in Culver City and we ended up having 400 people at workouts on Santa Monica Beach. We would come back to our little wellness hub there and we expanded to 8 major wellness centers and now we're all over the United States. And so really it was something natural, but I was already looking at avenues that were aligned with my values. And I think sometimes when we're in transition, we force ourselves to make choices rather than really giving ourselves space and patience to really see what's aligned for us. And even if it's not something we can do right away, it's something we can build on the side, right? So yeah, that's what I've taught people to do, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
I love that, Laura. And I like how you talked about oftentimes we try to force ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I heard you talk about this on the panel, even during your recruiting process,
Totally.
where you were like putting pressure on yourself, like, oh, I have to make a decision versus taking time. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I know a lot of athletes have gone through that or are currently going through that.
Totally. And it's also amazing to explore, like, especially when you're like jump into a lot of things, you're not going to like hurt yourself, but really give yourself space to try a lot of things, to see what fits, and build a lot of awesome relationships and gather a lot of skills. That's all we're doing, is we're gathering skills, we're gathering relationships, we're gathering resources. As long as we're good human beings and we're doing our best, that's all going to travel with us to what we do next.
Right. I want to dive more into what you said about this discovery process, which started while you were in college, which is so important to hear, because it sounds like, was this writing stuff down? Was this like visualizing what your life would look like? How did you manage to start that discovery process and actually like actively create a life for yourself while in the midst of competing at a high level? Like, how did you manage to do that? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think I'm always kind of I would call myself a visionary. So it does definitely start as like pictures and like my ideal scene in my head, and then figuring out the actualization on how I'm going to bring that forward. And so, yeah, it would start as like, what lifestyle do I want? Who's there? Like, how do I want to feel? What do I want to experience? Right. And then like, okay, what are the avenues? Who's doing that? Right. Like what players that are 4 years older than me have put themselves in a place where, like you said, you were like, Thomas was a mentor for you, right? There were a few girls that had played actually at USC that were mentors for me. I was like, listen, I know you're like doing 6 side hustles, but it's better to me than putting myself in a corporate job that I don't want to be in a box, right? So I would like take them out to lunch and ask them questions. Like, so this was like only my sophomore year, because I knew I just wanted to know. My parents, I'm from Chicago. My parents are like, if you want to stay out in LA, you need to figure it out. I definitely consider myself somebody that's, very blessed, and I'm privileged, but I haven't been like given any handouts. It's like, oh, if you're going to be in LA, figure it out. LA is expensive. So I knew, if I'm going to stay out here when I graduate, I'm going to need to be making $10,000 a month in order to figure out how to live the lifestyle that I enjoy currently. Salads are like $30.
For real.
so you have to figure it out, right? It's insane. So I was kind of pushed in that regard, but also I think I always am looking for what's next. Like even today, I'm still having those relationships. I'm still talking to people now, nonprofits, people doing work overseas in Africa. Like I'm always building relationships with people that are inspiring me to become a better person. And so that's kind of how the process started. I was actually building companies on the side in college. I remember I was, since I was a little kid, my brother and my family, we would sit around the kitchen table, and Shark Tank was our favorite show, and we would always be coming up with different ideas. So like recruiting, like I wanted to basically build Match.com for college students to colleges and match them with their college and their coach. And actually something went on Shark Tank, like exactly what I built, and they won. And I was like, screw it. But yeah, I think it's great. Like, listen, we're obviously trying to win. We're focused on winning a national championship. We're focused on teamwork. We're focused on being in the best shape of our lives, but we can also focus on our skill sets and relationships and what's next for us at the same time. I don't think it has to be an either or.
I love that. It doesn't have to be an either or. And it's so funny you say that, because I've even been guilty of this at times, saying that it's difficult to do when you're so immersed in your sport, which is somewhat true. But then you come on here and give that shining example of, well, I was doing all that, trying to win a championship, but actively creating, envisioning the type of life that I wanted. So you didn't just end up somewhere, but you could choose somewhere, which I think is super powerful.
We, as amazing athletes, we're really linear focused, right? It's like win. Okay, great. But there's a lot more to life than winning. And that's really expanding from a winning mindset to a yes and mindset, to a expansive container. And that's knowing that I have to grow as a person so I can do this and this. It's not an either or. It's I can win a national championship, and I can do community service, and I can show up for my family, and I can do all these things. I just get to become a better person. I just get to grow my container and my capacity. So I think that we can become more multidimensional humans and athletes if we allow ourselves to be, because I think we're raised, and hopefully this is shifting, especially with the pandemic and our values shifting as we evolve. I think we're raised to be one-dimensional and linear, and I think that can be really painful to step out of and go, wait, this is what I gave my whole life to, right? Like I know some athletes that leave and they're feeling lost and depressed because that's all they knew. And we are not our jersey, right? We're more than our jersey. You know, that's just an extension of our gifts, but there's so many ways that we can play in this world. And I wish that athletes, at least hopefully I'll raise my kids to know this, that you're more than your sport, right? And you can start to be more than your sport early on.
Mm-hmm. Just like you did, you're a prime example of that, you know. Oh man, I'm loving this conversation, Laura. This is so good. This is so, we can end the interview right there.
Did you do that? Were you, in your sport and doing more for, your team, your school? Like, were you thinking about what's next, or did that something that like hit you hard and you had to reinvent?
Oh, I had to completely reinvent. Not only did it wasn't even like a reinvention. It was a struggle, being lost, and then a reinvention. And, people who listen to the podcast, they've heard me talk about this before. They know my whole journey where I did not prepare. I just kind of figured that everything would work itself out. Because you know how it is. When you're good at your sport, the world is handed to you on a silver platter.
Well, that's all you see. That's your only perspective.
Exactly. So I just thought, and I always joke about this, I thought I would move back home. And just because I had my degree and my education was paid for, I'd be like, someone's just waiting on me to give me a job. I was making six figures by the time I'm 25, not understanding that you have to be intentional and create what it is that you want. No one's going to just hand you money because you got an education. So, but and that's one of the things that fascinates me most about what you just shared. Sorry, did you want to say something? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, no, I totally agree. Like nobody cares about your trophy. And your accomplishments, they care about your characteristics, like, and who you are as a person and what you bring to the table. And that's those are those transferable skills that I know both you and Thomas talk about. I know my daddy works for the Wall Street Journal. He says he'll only hire athletes because he doesn't have to teach about to work hard.
That's right.
There's some intangibles that we come with, and those are the things that we want to bring forward with us, not like what we've done and our accomplishments. And those things are all great because you've learned certain skill sets in order to do those things. And that's what you're going to carry with you in business. And that's what you got to carry with you inside of that transition. It's not going to, nothing, like you said, nothing's going to be handed to you. You got to still go out and build those connections the same way you did in practice.
Right. Yeah. Another reason I'm fascinated by your story is because you knew early on that you didn't want to work in the corporate world.
No.
I knew that too. I was doing everything. I thought about being a music producer for a little bit. Cool. I was like, anything that keeps me out of the cubicle, that's what I was doing after college.
Right.
But how did I almost wish you had like a documentary or like a camera following you around during that time. Like, so just walk everybody through, because I think, like I said, we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs that tune into the power of story. We have a lot of athletes who tune in to Thrive After Sports who want to be entrepreneurs, because as you and I both know, athletes make great entrepreneurs, know. But just walk us through, like, you graduate from UCLA, you need 10 grand to survive in LA and be comfortable. What happens? Like, what did you do next? What was the very next thing you did after graduation?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I did is like I said, I was taking a ton of people to lunches. Like I was interviewing like all these girls that played that were like 4 or 5 years older than me, that I looked up to who they were being and what they were doing and what their kind of vibe and their lifestyle was like. So those that are listening to this podcast, like, congratulations, this is your lunch date. That, like, it's COVID, you can't really be going out on lunch dates. So you're listening. So that's awesome. You're tuned in. And I don't think we had podcasts like this when I was graduating college. So maybe I would be listening to something like this instead. But I was ear hustling for nuggets and advice and support, and I was connecting with tons of people that I looked up to. And obviously you don't just asked to receive, you give to receive, right? So I was pouring into them as well, and whatever I could with my connections, with my gifts, giving back to them. But I was doing a ton of that. And then I would say I was listening, like really being guided. Like I truly believe in being guided by something greater. Like everything that I've done is kind of, it's felt like breadcrumbs. And I think if I'm tuned in enough and I'm aware enough with myself and I'm aligned enough, I can kind of see the next step. I can see the breadcrumbs. And I think doors and windows open up when you're following that versus living out of alignment. Like we could be done with college and we could be going to take shots at the bar, and we can be whiling out, I'm free, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've lived a really fun life. But I just think that wouldn't have allowed me to see as clearly and to see those the kind of breadcrumbs that were lining up for me. So I just met the right people. Like it was like one thing led to the next, led to the next, led to this story, led to the people that we started to build this business together. So I was coaching on the side to have something that I knew I wasn't going to do this forever. I already said, I'm like, I don't want to own my own volleyball club. I don't want to go to the top of this. So I was doing this on the side because I loved it. And I loved mentoring while following those relationships and those steps to create what I really wanted to do. And I still do that today. I still have this on the side and this on the side while I'm opening the next door to my growth and what I'm here to do.
I love that. Something that I talk about a lot, and I want to pull this out of what you just shared, is the importance of doing what you have to do so that you can do what you want to do.
Absolutely. And I think it becomes easier when you know it's not what you're going to do long term, right?
Exactly.
And I'm like, how can you do something where it's like your skill sets fit, it's the right environment, maybe the right people, you're going to have some relationships, but you can kind of almost do it on automatic where it's easy enough where you can really build something on the side that you want until that overtakes what you're doing to pay the bills.
Yeah, I love that part of it. And what you did with coaching, which is great because it's something, like you said, it's easy for you to kind of go through it.
I was the varsity coach. I coached club. it was fun. It was easy.
Right. And it left you with the energy left over because you're not doing something for money all day that you're exhausted. Totally. So you can't even build on the side. You come home from coaching, you're still energized, and you can still build your business, multiple 100%. Businesses. But
100%.
Yeah. Let's get to that. I want to talk about obviously, and you and I were touching base on this before we started recording. We have a very similar line of work and reason for why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about, I know you do many different things, we could be on here for hours talking about that, but what is the work that you're doing now centered around, and just give us a little look into your daily life and some of the ways you're serving people.
Yeah. So like I said, right now I have 3 to 4 arms of what I'm doing. So the first one is I have wellness centers all over the United States. Some have a fitness component. Some are just like wellness cafes, which are really fun. So I'm currently located in Chicago, and think about it like a healthy lounge. You can come in, you can get a healthy smoothie, you can get an energizing tea, you can get a protein-based coffee, you can sit, we're gonna have great music, high vibe conversation, a good book to read. And then off of that, we'll do transformation programs if you want to take your life to the next level. So we're hitting 100% of the market that wants breakfast, and then 20% that wants to take their life to the next level inside of that. So we got that all over. And then I have a podcast running called Activate Podcast, which is all about growing on both the goal line and the soul line and living in alignment with your truth, which is what we were just sharing about. And then I've co-founded a nonprofit called oneformany.org. You can look it up. We are all about giving back to underprivileged communities and giving one person a chance, and just that one person, the ripple effect they can make. So we're going to be giving scholarships to kids in Zimbabwe to come to the United States. We're going to be funding orphanages in Uganda. We're going to be funding a really cool organization on the south side of Chicago. And then we're going to be funding something called Mama Hope, which is all over Africa and the United States and underprivileged communities, where we're really empowering entrepreneurship and people to grow their skill sets and just give people a way to fish so they can support themselves in their gifts and really live and shine. So you guys can be involved with that. We're just basically funding and finding and supporting nonprofits that we believe in, that work in communities that really, really need support. And we're also giving them coaching and support as well so they can stay alive, because a lot of nonprofits fail. And then in terms of like coaching, I like to do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I like to do a lot of workshops, retreats. Hopefully we'll be able to start doing those this summer, where we really dive deep into what's holding us back, right? Like, why aren't we listening to our truth? Why are we scared to go to the next level? What do we really want? You know, what is our truth? What does that even mean? Where have I been limiting myself, and how can I really take the next step into living a life that I love and I'm meant to live? So that's like really what I stand for. I kind of do that in a multitude of expressions, but that's what I'm up to.
That's awesome. Okay, so I probably should ask you this while we're not recording, but I'm just gonna ask you anyway before I forget. This is just me being selfish. Where are your wellness cafes located? Because I definitely want to pull up and support.
Yeah,
and it sounds like a great place
LA?
to be.
Where are you?
No, I actually just moved from San Diego to Austin, Texas.
Oh,
so,
you're in Austin. Okay, so I can hook you up with some people in Texas.
Okay.
My biggest groups right now are in Chicago, Connecticut, and Arizona, and LA. But I have some group in Texas that I can support you.
Okay, yeah, please. And where in Arizona? Because I like to go to Sedona every now and then. So.
Oh, I love Sedona. We're not in Sedona, but we're in Tempe, we're in Mesa, we're in Phoenix, Scottsdale area.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you up if I'm ever in Phoenix.
Yeah, you would really like our Arizona team. So Khalil runs that tribe, and he's an ex-football player. He's got some rings from UMass. I think he won a national championship there.
Yeah, UMass used to smack us at Stony Brook back in the day.
Oh, really?
We'll say that for another day.
He's a lot older than you, so I don't know.
Okay, good. So he probably didn't. He probably wasn't personally putting the whooping on my team, but. Another thing before I forget to ask, because I know you mentioned your nonprofit support, or your business supports other nonprofits to help them fund. Do you know Miriam Glaze from Athlete Soul? Does that name ring a bell?
No.
Okay. She's a former Olympic swimmer, and I'm a coach. I'm a contract coach for her nonprofit. So she does nonprofit transition coaching, and she has a team of coaches. And I'm going to connect you guys later. I want to get on. Back to you.
That's awesome. I would love to meet her. That sounds like a cool thing.
I'm just gonna make a note to introduce you to, because that's definitely a great connection.
See, you guys, like this moment right here is how shit happens. See, people they're like, how do you create what's next? So we met through my friend Thomas, right? And Thomas and I were just support systems for each other in Los Angeles, because we were doing the same thing. And you kind of need support from people that are doing the same things, so you don't feel alone, right? And you can empower and inspire each other. We met through them. You're like, let me connect you with this girl. Maybe I meet this girl, and it opens up doors. And now I'm doing Live Laura in Africa, doing all this crazy because this podcast. You never know. You just got to put yourself out there and build quality, authentic relationships.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because I'm over here being selfish, just asking questions, trying to make connections. But people listening back to the way we just interacted,
it's so simple,
like you said, Laura,
but honestly, it's so simple, and that's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I want to get back to what we were talking about, just everything you have going on now. Like, what is next for you? I know you got a lot going on right now, but where is everything that you're doing heading? Or do you have any big future projects you're working on that you can share?
Yeah, my brother always asks me that. He's like, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And I feel like I would do what I'm doing exactly right now. Like, I really do love what I'm doing. I think I would just do it more freely. I really, honestly, am so excited for the next chapter to be with my family. Like, I'm really craving like family and kids. I actually just interviewed Thomas's girl, and we were talking about that yearning, like that next chapter, right? So I think I'm giving myself at least enough space for that to happen for myself. But I do see just an expansion, like more wellness centers all over the world. I got a business partner going to Ghana. We're going to open up in Africa. We're going to do, I want to do tons of nonprofit work. Like, if we could really get 100 kids into school, like, in the United States, that would be so awesome. I think like doing at least 3 to 4 retreats a year would be super fun, and growing the podcast to a bunch of listeners that really impact their life. Like, I mean, maybe a few more books, or a book first, and then a few more after that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you? What's next for you?
Man, I have a lot I'm really loving where I'm at right now. It's the first time I can say that in a while where I'm like,
Wow.
you know how it is. You're starting, you're like building and grinding. And I'm like, man, I look back, I'm like, I'm very happy with where I'm at. Yeah. And I'm kind of open to, I think I was telling you this beforehand, helping more of the general population with transitions. I've enjoyed working with athletes, and that's great. And I think after I wrote the book, I was like, now I want to see who else I can serve while still serving athletes as well. Yeah. So I'm looking to branch out more into life transitions in general, kind of get back to my recruiting roots and just help people who are trapped in jobs that they're miserable in or unsure of which direction they want to go, or, you know, people wanting to break away from the 9-to-5 and get into entrepreneurship and start building on the side, like you were saying. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that, of doing what you got to do to earn money, but building.
I feel like 2020 really supported people with the awareness of like, am I really doing what I want to do? Like, is this, I think a lot of people woke up this year to pivoting or just seeing where they were living out of alignment. So it's perfect timing for that. In transition of one of my wellness centers, like basically, long story short, in entrepreneurship, you're going to have highs and lows. Not everything is straight to the moon, right? You're working with people, you're working with, it's just, you know, it's crazy. You got to have grit, just like you do as an athlete. That's why so many people on the line, it's great for you. It's not for everyone, but if you're called to it, you know, you can really bring forth a lot of your athlete skills sets into it. So one of our buildings got bought. So I had like this whole transition process that we had just built out, and they're like, you have 6 months to get out. It was like an out clause in a lease that my lawyer didn't catch. So I went back and I got my master's in spiritual psychology in University of Santa Monica. And in studying there, so it's 33 principles in unconditional loving, where you're really peeling back the layers, right? Of really what's out of alignment for you and how can you live more freely. And that really supported me with exactly what you're saying of how can I be a better bridge and support system for everyone in their life. Like no matter what transition they're going through, it really is an inside job. It's not necessarily on the outside, like sports to real life. Yes, that's like physically what's happening, but then there's this internal process that's happening in every transition. So that's really what we're supporting people through, is finding peace and clarity and a sense of trust in the unknown and trust in themselves through these scary transitions, which that's what we're really looking to cultivate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And so spiritual psychology, that makes me think of Christine Hassler. I know you.
Yeah,
I'm sure you know who Christine.
We studied at the same school.
See, that's what I was gonna ask. University of Santa Monica. She, I actually came across her work when I think my girlfriend might have actually put me on to Christine Hassler.
Okay.
But when I was going through my like dark period after college, I started listening to her podcast, and I really like the live coaching sessions because you can listen to yourself in the session. So that's cool. You kind of remind me of Christine Hassler too.
Yeah,
like
in a very subtle way. It's a cool school. I mean, you could totally do it online now. They're offering it at like a subsidized, like a good price because it's all virtual now. But yeah, she's really, really, really powerful with getting people unstuck. For sure. Yeah. That's what we are, is we're bridges, right? So no matter what we're doing, we're helping people through life transitions.
That's right. Yeah. Everybody go, if you're listening right now or watching this, go check out Christine Hassler, but listen to Laura's podcast first. All right. You're listening here. Thank you for tuning in with me on Thrive After Sports and the Power of Story. But listen, go check out Laura's podcast.
We both are fans of Christine. Yeah. And
exactly.
Her man Stefanos is great for men that are really, guarded and wanting to open up to their vulnerability, because it's not really how we're conditioned as men, especially athlete men, right? Like, don't feel, tough it out, just go through. Her man is really powerful for men too.
Yeah, you just made me think of something I want to share for all the guys tuning in. So quick story, I was listening to like a couples thing that they had, Christine and Steph had a part where the man speaks to the woman. So you do the breathing exercises. I listen to that podcast. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So there were certain things that I said to my girlfriend that I started crying. And it's not like on some beautiful. Just like being vulnerable and talking about my fears and things like that. Like I'm afraid to fail, and just saying that out loud like got me super emotional. So I want to use that as a moment for all you guys tuning in. Like, hey, if you're struggling right now, whether you're a former athlete or not, I don't care what you got to do. If you got to close the door, just so nobody can see you, let it out. Because sometimes we need to process those emotions. Like, go run around outside and
Not
scream if you need
sometimes,
to,
all
or
the time.
yeah,
All
all
the
the time,
time.
all the time.
Yeah, we really, that's so beautiful that you just gave them permission for that. I think that as athletes, probably one of the biggest awakenings for me on this path that really like put me down this spiritual and personal growth path was the fact that like my injuries, because I kept overriding. It was like, just do whatever you can to win. Like, just do it. Like, to the point where when I transferred to UCLA, I didn't pass my physical and I didn't even know like that I was playing on a torn ACL and playing on a torn rotator cuff. I was just overriding my body. And I think so many of us listening, like, where do we override what's going on underneath? And at some point it's going to come forward, right? At some point we're going to have to deal with it. And it's so healthy to process our emotions, right? Like you said, ask for help. We don't have to have it all together, right? It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for support. It's okay to get therapy. It's okay to ask for help. Like, as type A all-American athletes, you know, that have had a spotlight on us from a young age, we think we have to have it all together. We can have the misunderstanding that we have to have it all together for everyone else in order to prove whatever we're trying to prove, right? And so I just think that that's such beautiful permission that you just gave everybody listening to ask for support, you know. And you're crying and sharing honestly with your significant other, that created true connection right there, right? A true intimacy. So I think we mistake what intimacy even is. Like, that's such a beautiful example of just being completely open and available for what's there. I'm so that if you can give more men access to that, I think we can heal as a world. Men and women need to do this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Laura. That's really good. I wanted to ask you too, like, it's interesting because I had questions that I planned on asking you, but through your story, like, if people really listen into your story, it's, you already set the example, but I'm just gonna ask you anyway because I feel like asking you could bring up some more great stuff. So there's an athlete right now, he or she is listening right now, they're tuned in, they're like, man, I just graduated or my professional career is over, I'm lost, I'm struggling. It's great that, you know, Laura and Taj figured it out, but I have no idea what I want to do. I don't even know where to start. How would you advise that person to start beginning the process of discovering and mapping out the next stages of their lives so they can create that new chapter after their sport?
So the first thing is, it's okay to be uncertain. Like, life isn't always going to be rainbows and butterflies. So where you're at, every single one of us has been there. Even if you're looking at us now and you're being like, God, they have it all together. We both didn't have it together at one point. So you're not alone is the first thing that I would want you to know and really take in. The second thing is, I think, you know, being happy is really, really, really important. And so, you know, whether that means just doing the things that make you feel healthy and alive. So taking care of your physical body, sleeping enough, doing things that you did as a little kid that really brought you joy, to tap back into that aliveness inside of yourself. Like, so ask yourself, what are 3 things that I did as a little kid that made me happy? You know, was it bike riding? Was it painting? Was it drawing? Was it pick up football? Was it calling my brother? What really, really brought you to life? And start to do some of those things again. The third thing is, I would write down your gifts and your skill sets that you've taken with you your entire life. So, you know, in school, were you a leader? Were you the captain? Were you the artist? Were you the connector? Were you the Scottie Pippen of the team? Like, what were your skills, your gifts, your assets in everything you've done, the nuances, the in between, right? Not the title, but like what you brought to the table. And then think about all the different careers, like things, people out there that inspire you, right? Like, who inspires you most? And what characteristics about them inspire you most? So if it's Richard Branson, maybe it's, okay, he's built a really aspirational brand. He's free, he gives back, he's healthy, right? If it's, I don't know, there's so many beautiful examples of different people doing different things, but what about them? What about their lifestyle? And then what careers can you put that into, right? Like, what What makes you happy? What lights you up? Who's already doing that? And then who are 3 people right now that you could take to lunch or write an email or reach out to via social media and get some support and advice on how to take that next best step. And then just start doing those things every single day. Feel good about yourself every single day. Feel healthy, feel happy, feel alive, make those connections, and start to do that inner work. And I think the opportunities are going to start to present themselves if you allow it.
Go ahead and drop the mic, Laura. Go ahead and drop the mic on that one. So anybody tuning in, right? If you're having trouble, like, this is what this podcast is about. You know, this is what Thrive After Sports is about. Like, this is what the Power of Story is about. You hear how Laura's overcome some challenges, been able to carve out a lane for herself. Listen back to that last 2 minutes of her going in. That is just like the complete recipe for any life transition.
What's your recipe?
My recipe is very similar. I have a whole process that I do where I'm encouraging them to do the same thing, where it's you have to first of all spend time, like you said, getting clear on what it is that you want, figuring out what you do like, what you don't like, what you're good at. I even I advise people to ask the people in their life who's closest to them, like, how do you see me making a contribution to the world?
That's a great thing.
Yeah, I like doing that.
Also getting clear on your core values, like, what are you putting first? You know, is it family? Is it faith? Is it you know, money, you know, and your core values can shift at different chapters in your life. But when you're clear on like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 core values and their order, you can set really clear boundaries and say hell yes to things and hell no to things when you're really clear and centered on who you are and what you want. And really coming from that centered place on who you are is going to give you the personal power in these choices versus being needy.
Right. I really like that. I really like that.
You have an asset and people need you. Right? So when you stand true and powerful and strong inside of that, those opportunities are going to come and you're going to be able to say yes or no.
Man, this was phenomenal, Laura. We could go on and on. I want to be respectful of your time. Before we get out of here, please tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can listen to the podcast, all of that.
Most people listen on Apple, iTunes, you know, Activate Podcasts. You can find me at lauraeholloway.com, and I'll have everything up to date on there for you to kind of get in touch. So yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you so much, Taj.
Oh, thank you, Laura. This is the first of many conversations. I definitely want to have you back on the podcast. We could easily go for another hour or two. And I want to invite you to the next Athlete to Entrepreneur panel. So everyone tuning in, just stay tuned. You'll see Laura on future episodes or on the Athlete to Entrepreneur panel. I'll be reaching out to you about that. We'll have all of Laura's information in the show notes. You can go get in touch with her. Laura, thank you again so much for coming on. This has been phenomenal. I'm excited to listen back to this episode. You're making it difficult for me. I don't know how I'm going to find a clip to be able to post. It's like, I'll just post the whole episode, baby. You know?
You're awesome. And I'm excited for all of you on the line. Make sure you tag us with what your next step and your next move that you took is. I love hearing feedback on the moves that people are making.
That's right. You got to take action, folks. It's great to sit here and listen to Laura dropping gems, but what are you going to do with it? So take Laura up on that challenge. Make sure you tag us on what you're taking action on. This has been another great episode of the Power of Story podcast and Thrive After Sports with Laura Holloway. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again, Laura, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.